Welcome back to Music and Mind once again, the interview series where I, Adam Ficek, speak with leading musicians about the intersection of music and mental health. Today I'm joined by the amazing Barry Ashworth of the acclaimed Dub Pistols. What are you up to musically at the moment?
Well, we had the new album out a couple of months ago. I think it was March, April now, Frontline. So we've been pretty much touring that album. I've already started recording ideas, 5 or 6 new ideas for the next album. But right now, still promoting Frontline. Got a load of remixes coming out from that album as well. And working on promoting our festival, which is out in September.
And what do you prefer most? Performing, DJing, writing? What elements of the music stuff? Probably
performing for that 90 minutes, 2 hours. I've kind of had enough of the traveling, you know, the nights, the days, the endless hours and being away from home. But for the 2 hours of being on stage, I don't think you can beat that. And obviously, the camaraderie and the relationship you grow with your band, which hasn't always been that way. You know, I think as we've got older and got to appreciate the life we have and the life we've been given, we kind of get on a lot better than we ever used to.
What kind of things used to happen, used to cause problems?
Well, I think it's been quite well documented that, you know, for years, the Dub Pistols pretty much lived a pretty high octane rock and roll style lifestyle, which meant that we were drinking and, you know, there was a lot of substance abuse back in the days. And that obviously doesn't, even though it seems glamorous or whatever at the time, it causes massive problems within relationships, within your actual performing ability, and within the tensions within the band. You know, it was constantly on the edge, and there was lots of arguments and lots of fighting and just lots of really not acceptable behaviour.
Do you think that's changed in like the modern music environment?
I think so. I think it seems to me that the kids these days have got their heads screwed on a lot differently to the old days. I think when we were growing up, that rock and roll lifestyle was kind of looked up, you know, was kind of lauded, if you like, you know, and you were kind of, it was the thing to be done. If you were a straight artist, you were sort of kind of almost frowned upon. Do you know what I mean? As being, you know, whereas I don't think you are now. I think people realise the downside of all those things and the combination and the cocktail that will then bring into your life.
Yeah, it has changed, isn't it? Do you think that was tied into a lot of identity kind of growing up for you?
In what way?
Just think that natural rebellion, I guess, you know, if we're in those genres where I've always felt that buying into that rebellion was a huge part of the music I was into anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was always a massive part of, like you said, the bands that I was into. It was very much the culture that was around when I got into bands. You know, one of the biggest reasons I sort of got into the bands, got into actually performing, not into were the Happy Mondays. They weren't my biggest influence was like the Specials and the Clash, etc. But the Happy Mondays, they weren't the most fantastic musicians, but they were definitely the most hedonistic on stage. And it was kind of like that. I just thought, well, if I can go on stage and be that, then I can get away with it and I'll go and give it a go. It gave me the belief. And I think in the early days, certainly in the early years, which then unfortunately developed into, I guess, addiction, whether it was alcohol or substance abuse, which kind of you did to go on stage to think that you know, it was that you kidded yourself that you needed a drink or you needed this to go and perform. I don't think there was also people around in those, you know, the whole mental health. Artists weren't looked after like they are now. I don't think, you know, the whole industry, everybody was at it, whether or not it was A&R departments, it was the record label, everybody was, involved in that lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? And I think now, I think the whole mental health issue is so prevalent in every way, especially since COVID, that people are a hell of a lot more aware of the problems that everything can, all those things, the cocktail of that whole thing, the madness that it can cause, and the depression, because you're only masking things, to go on stage and think you've had a drink and you're performing better it's a joke.
What do you think's shifted that?
I just, in the music industry or just generally?
Both.
I just think that people now, like I said, I think people are way more aware of opening up about their mental health issues, talking about their mental health issues. I think COVID made more people realise their own, how easy it is to fall into that world. Do you know what I mean? How easy depression can get hold of you, how easy insecurities can take hold. So I think that was, that was a massive step forward. And I think, losing stars like Amy and Keith and things like that really sort of driven it home in recent years.
What about other areas, moving into a different area of making music? What do you enjoy most about making music?
The torture. No, it's not torture. I'm just joking. I've never considered myself. I'm more of a producer than a musician. I'm surrounded by great musicians. I have I'm more of an ideas man. And then because I've got, fantastic players like Tim Hutton and various other people that I can call on to play the musical parts that I can hear in my head and bring it together, that I like, it's that the repetition of hearing the same song a million times over, is the worst part of being in a studio. But when it all comes together and you get that final end product, or you just know when you've just suddenly made a great song. You know what it's like, Adam? You every song that you try to write or every piece of music that you try to make, it has to be in your head better than anything you've ever done before, or equally. But by very definition, it can't be. Do you know what I mean? Everything you do in life can't be the best thing you've ever done, but there are a few times, and, I don't know how many times this has happened to you. There's a few times when you've finished a track and literally the hairs on your arms will stand up and that track is, that is a good one. That's a big one. And that is when it's just, there's nothing like it, you just light up and you've written something you're really proud of.
Yeah, I agree. What about inspiration and motivation? Do you just find it hits you and you go in, or are you more of a work ethic of just going to write every day?
I used to write every day. I'm a great believer, and I know it sounds wrong, but that every poet is a thief, and I don't mean that in literally. What I mean is everything, constantly, you're always consuming. Being a DJ, you're constantly consuming new music, old music, listening to things, and whether subconsciously or consciously, you pick up an idea that from something else you've heard somewhere else, and you recreate it and take it in another direction. But it would been inspired by something I've heard along the way that makes me go, oh, that's like amazing, that's incredible. Or an old song, and I just think, oh, just to reinterpret something or a sound.
And you mentioned sound there. Being a producer, is that a big part of how you sculpt and shape your stuff as well? Actually, the sound rather than the instrumentation or lyrics, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite often I'll start with more of a groove than anything else, and then a bass line, and then the melody will come, and then the song. Very rarely does the song come for the melody from the lyrics and things come first. It's always the other way around. I'll start with a groove because I think I come from a dance music electronic background. So the drums and the bass are the first thing for me, and then quite often, then the melody, which will quite often come from horns normally for me.
You mentioned there about being inspired by some of the stuff you've listened to. Do you have particular songs or pieces that when you're in certain moods can be helpful?
Well, I quite often, I mean, obviously, I said before that the Clash and the Specials and Weather and everything were a massive early part of my foundation. And through bands like, and through the two-tone movement, then obviously I moved into the Jamaican sort of culture and things like that. But now, having reached the age of 57, I've gone through every kind of genre of music, you know, from, like I said, early ska, early punk, hip hop, then getting into the reggae, and then going off to Ibiza, and then just becoming a club promoter and getting into the house sound, and then being into the indie bands of the 90s and the Stone Roses and the, you know, and Oasis and things like that. So your repertoire or your catalogue that you listen to is it becomes bigger and wider and more varied constantly. I think Damon Albarn with his Gorillaz thing for me is a perfect example of where he can be Blur, but I think it was Gorillaz where he really started experimenting and finding a different path, but all those other influences are all there.
And what about particular songs? If you're in a particular mood, particular tracks or bands that uplift you?
One of my favourite all-time tracks, and nobody would really put me and this track together, is Terry Callier, Ordinary Joe. You know, whenever I'm feeling down, then I just got to play that track, or if it's a perfect sunny day, I've just got to play that track, and it will just lift me up and set me soaring. You know, it's just like, which nobody would really, like I said, you wouldn't think that me and Terry Callier would be bedfellows.
What is it about that track?
Just such a feel-good track. Just love the lyrics. Do you know what I mean? And just the melancholy of the music. Do you know what I mean? It just does it for me every time. It puts a smile on my face.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I grew up massively listening to a lot of, not by choice, but my father was a massive Bob Dylan, Rory Gallagher fan. So, you know, I've used to listen to a hell of a lot of Bob Dylan when I was growing up, and that, you know, but I really loved the lyrics, you know. But my dad used to go to the pub every Sunday, come home drunk, make us sit there and listen to Bob Dylan or whoever, and basically tell me what it was all about. Do you know what I mean? Even though my thing was going upstairs listening to my, Greensleeves records and things like that. But now I appreciate all that musical education.
I can hear how holistically all of that music stuff kind of comes together in regards to you being a listener, producer, performer, all of those different areas. It sounds like it's been a real journey for you.
Yeah, I mean, music's been it is, you know, for me is the most uplifting thing you can have in your life. And you know, I'm lucky enough to have had a career that spanned 30 plus years to be able to still be doing the thing that I love. You know, is just mind blowing. Even though, as I explained to a lot of people, we're probably the most successfully unsuccessful band.
Do you think it would have changed if you'd have been successful?
Possibly, because I think people become complacent. I think, you know, I think your mood changes. But when you've been through the amount of ups and downs as we have, you still have that, I believe. I mean, I think that you still have that edge, and you still have that desire, and you still have that hunger. But even though now I kind of feel like, well, I'm probably in the most comfortable place I've ever been, in terms of, before you used to worry about reviews, you used to worry about critiques, you used to worry about getting on a playlist, you used to worry about, you know, whether or not you're going to get a record deal, whether you just lost a record deal. And I kind of feel like, having gone through the mill and had so many ups and downs, like most bands, we're kind of at a good place now. And the way the industry's changed now, it doesn't matter if you're not on the front cover of NME, doesn't matter if you're not on the Radio 1 playlist, doesn't matter if you're not on Top of the Pops. Do you know what I mean? It's like you can still have a decent career. And I feel like we've become more of a cult thing, and we have a fantastic following. I mean, people call them fan bases. I find them more like a family. Do you know what I mean? It's more like because that's how they'll become like friends. Because you see them all every gig. Do you know what I mean? Wherever we play around the world.
Yeah, that sense of community where you're all in it together, really. I
think that especially the people who follow the Dub Pistols, because they've really been through the journey with us, and they give me, it's that whole thing of how you respect the people that give you the opportunity to do what you do. Do you know what I mean? It's like never take anything for granted, and it's that love that we've got back that's carried us through and enabled us to keep going.
And how long do you reckon you're going to keep going for?
I'd like to say until my knees give out, but they've already given up. You know what? It's something that can't. When I was younger, I never used to have a fear of mortality. I guess it's only as you get older you start to realise, that the mortality becomes a issue. And I think COVID really brought everything into perspective with me in terms of I suddenly realised that 11 months of the year I was on the road, and what basically happens is you give up everything in your life, and it's the people that you're closest to and the people that you love that suffer the most because you never see them. You're on such antisocial hours, and as you get older and time is running out, I know it sounds really morbid, the most important thing are the people closest to you, and they're the one, so it's having that time to spend with people that you really love and you really care about. So, I mean, I've no plans to be giving up anytime soon. What I would like to do was, and I keep saying this, and then I completely go against everything I say, which is say no more often, do less touring, and spend more time with the family and the people I love. We're the worst mates, aren't we? We're never available for weddings. We're never available for this, never available for birthdays. We're always out, we're entertaining, and so that makes you antisocial.
It's a tough life, but a glorious one.
I mean, every line on my face is because I've never stopped laughing. Don't get me wrong, there's been absolute tears, but mostly it's been one field of laughter.
Barry, thank you very much. That's been great. Thank you for listening to Music in Mind with me, Adam Ficek. Make sure you check out the Tonic Music website for free groups, workshops and courses for both music fans and those working in the music industry.